Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
Welcome to Politically Correct. I'm DK Singh. In this episode, I'm going to talk about RSS Chief Mohan Bhagwat's speech on Saturday and how BJP leaders seem to have completely misunderstood his message. On Saturday, Bhagwat was talking about COVID crisis that we are facing today. And what he said was, in terms of how we got where we are today, he said, what to speak of just the people, the government, the administration, by which I think he means bureaucracy. He was saying that kya shasan, kya janta, kya prashasan, sare gaflat mein aa gaye. I think flummoxed is not the right translation. You can say that everybody was caught off guard. Another important point he made was that, it's a crisis period. The country needs to stand united. It's not an appropriate time for finger pointing. Now, it was meant as a message to all political parties. We have seen how the BJP is attacking the Congress is attacking the BJP. This government opposition face off everywhere. It's not the Congress or the BJP. Like every opposition party is attacking the government, accusing it of total mismanagement, accusing it of having dropped the ball after the first wave, and the government basically, giving it back to them. And what did you do? What did you say earlier? Anyway, so we're not getting into those details. What I'm saying is there were two main messages, I would say, from the RSS chief to the political leadership. What was the response? Very next day you saw somebody like B.L. Santosh, National General Secretary Organization of the BJP. Now this post, this post is reserved for people who are on deputation from the RSS. B.L. Santosh is from the RSS. So you come on deputation in the BJP. It's a very powerful post because you are the bridge between the RSS and the BJP when it comes to day-to-day functioning. He launches a blistering attack on Akhilesh Yadav. Basically, a day before, I think a few hours before, early in the morning, in fact, Akhilesh Yadav had tweeted calling for a national vaccination drive. B.L. Santosh went after him. He says, and I'm just quoting his tweet, "What happened to you, Ji? The other day you refused to take what you call Modi vaccine, and today you are championing vaccine drive. History will never forgive political vultures like you." A very strong word, also very strong description even for a political adversary, calling him a political vulture. That too coming from a senior leader like B.L. Santosh. That was surprising, especially when the RSS chief Mohan Bhagwat had advised against it just the previous day. Now, you can say B.L. Santosh was not wrong. Of course, he was not wrong in the sense that, Akhilesh Yadav did criticize the vaccine as calling it a BJP vaccine and saying that he would not be taking that vaccine. If you recall that was, I think, sometime in January this year. And he faced a lot of flack for that. But after this, if he's calling for a national vaccination drive, what's wrong with that? And why to call him a political vulture? I mean, that's not something that you use for your political adversary. Anyway, it's not just about B.L. Santosh. Then came Amit Malviya, BJP's IT cell head. He went after Kejriwal, basically accusing him of underreporting death in Delhi. Again, there is nothing wrong in his allegation. Yes, there have been many reports about this discrepancy in official figures and what you see at cremation grounds and burial grounds. There's a huge discrepancy. There is definitely underreporting of death. There are many other instances, allegations of data fuzzing in Delhi when it comes to COVID. But then it's not just the Delhi government. All over, in every state you see that. And because we are talking in the context of Amit Malviya, he would very well remember that these allegations have been coming from even BJP ruled states like Karnataka, Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh. In Goa, we saw only last week, there were deaths because of suspected oxygen supply disruptions for 4 consecutive days, from 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. for 4 consecutive days. So much so that on the first day when 26 people died in a government medical college and hospital, the health minister of Goa, Vishwajit Rane, demanded a high court probe into the reasons for it. He said that it was because of oxygen supply and went on for 4 days. So the tally of deaths in that hospital, it's estimated to be 83 in 4 days because of suspected oxygen supply. Of course, the hospital superintendent was brought to a press conference on Saturday by the chief minister and the health minister, where the superintendent said that there is no direct link between the death and the oxygen supply. He had no other explanation for the deaths anyway. But probably what the BJP leaders, how they interpret it is, when RSS chief said, kya sasan, kya prashasan, kya janta, probably they interpreted it is like, when everybody is responsible, the people are responsible, the government is responsible, the political leadership is responsible, the bureaucracy is responsible. If everybody is responsible, nobody is accountable for the lapses. So probably the BJP leaders' understanding is that RSS gave them a clean chit. Although I would say it was probably the benefit of doubt, but in their understanding it was a clean chit, and then so they went ballistic the very next day against opposition parties. But that's not the case. If you have to understand what the RSS chief was saying, you should also look at what Ram Madhav, very senior RSS leader, wrote on the same day. And knowing RSS, you should understand that when Ram Madhav is writing something on the day when the RSS chief is speaking, it must have been cleared by the top. It's not that Ram Madhav takes some line thinking that, okay, let the Sarsang Chalak say whatever he says, and I will take my own line. It does not happen in RSS like that. Ram Madhav is back in the RSS, and you're very familiar with his name. He was a BJP General Secretary. I think in March he was brought back to the RSS. Although he signed that article as a member Board of Governors India Foundation, but he was appointed to the Central Executive Council of the RSS, and is a very important member of the RSS today. So when he writes, the context in which this is coming. So what Bhagwat left unsaid or vague, actually Madhav supplemented that through his write-up. And in the write-up, Ram Madhav says it very clearly that, okay, initially it looked like that the Modi government initially looked like a deer caught in the headlights. But after that, it went into full throttle in handling the crisis. And then Ram Madhav showers praise on Modi government's efforts. But at the same time, and let me read out where he supplemented where Bhagwat left. Ram Madhav says, a little more transparency, a little more engagement with the public by the political leadership, and a little more openness to constructive criticism. An enlightened expert opinion from outside the government would further help the government's efforts. It's a very nice message, although I would say instead of saying a little more, Madhav should have said a lot more, and I would like to read it like a lot more transparency is needed. For instance, when the government decided that, okay, the gap between two Covishield doses has to be increased from 8 to 12 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks, to 12 to 16 weeks. The government doubled it, citing real life experience in UK. A day after India does it, UK reduces its interval period. So in UK it was 12 weeks, it was reduced to 8 weeks. So obviously there was something fishy about it. If our government is telling us that, okay, we have studied something in the UK, and so we are increasing the interval between two Covishield doses, UK won't be doing it then, and UK did it the very next day. So there are a lot of things to be answered there, but there is no transparency, and it's not just one instance. There are many, but I'm not going to talk about that. That's why I'm saying when Madhav says a little more transparency, he cannot say that as a part of the RSS, but I think a lot more transparency is needed there. Then he is talking about a little more engagement with the public by the political leadership. We have seen that. Do you see any MLA MP on the ground? Maybe a few. You can count them on the fingers. Political leadership is nowhere to be seen on the ground when people are suffering, and that's a fact. And many MLAs, MP, in my previous episode, I think, in my previous episode, I have spoken about how the MLAs and BJP MLAs and MPs are writing to their chief ministers in Madhya Pradesh, in UP, in other places, basically saying that things are very bad and things are not happening the way it should be happening on the ground. And they are not able to help their constituents. They are already blaming the chief ministers. I have talked about it in detail in my previous episodes, so I will not go into that, but I I'm talking about it because of what Ram Madhav said, that a little more engagement is needed. I think a lot more engagement is needed. Then he's talking about more openness to constructive criticism. Of course, we have talked about this constructive criticism. Nobody takes criticism as constructive in this government, actually, and that's a fact. We saw when Dr. Manmohan Singh, the former Prime Minister, made some suggestions, the Health Minister of the country went after him in a letter, very critical of the former Prime Minister. Then we saw how BJP President JP Nadda responded to Sonia Gandhi's criticism, basically holding the opposition responsible for creating what Nadda said, false panic. Although I'll be really surprised if what we are experiencing today, I, you, everybody, is that false panic. That this is what the ruling party seems to be thinking. Now, coming to the next point, okay, we have talked about mismanagement. Let me wind it up. I don't want to just go on. So this is what is happening, what the RSS said, what Bhagwat said, what Madhav said, and how the BJP is reacting. So of course, BJP seems to be living in a different world where even the RSS's feedback from the ground does not seem to be convincing it of the need to basically bring everybody together and fight the pandemic together. Let me give you one example before I wind up. Last Thursday in Coimbatore, MK Stalin government, you may be familiar with this, MK Stalin government has appointed ministers for every district. Of every 2 districts, you have ministers. You go there, do COVID management. In Coimbatore, where the DMK did not have, not a single DMK MLA was elected in Coimbatore district. Yet, 2 ministers from MK Stalin government reached there on Thursday, got all AIA DMK MLAs on the dais and got their suggestions. I mean, that's the way to go. At an all-party meeting in Tamil Nadu we saw last week, an all-party legislators committee was constituted for the MLAs to give their suggestions. That's how you take everybody along. And that's what is needed today. That's all from me in this episode of Politically Correct. Thanks for watching.